certain sense. It's even more amazing that they, you know, they were the ones he was trying to educate. They didn't have all that education and all that Torah knowledge that he had. They were simply following him into the wilderness. He would say, like the Jews follow Moshe Rabbeinu into the wilderness. Out of Egypt, they follow him into the wilderness to start this yeshiva. And young boys, with all the uncertainty that would entail, putting aside they didn't put aside their college education. I think they went at night, but still, it was devoting a lot of time when they really could have been working together ahead of life, ahead to build their careers. So there was unrest within the student body, within this group of devoted young students who were courageous and
Rabbi?
Yes. Yeah, I hear. Anybody hear an echo? Does somebody have a speakerphone on or something like that?
I'm sorry. I'll take it out. I'm so sorry. I'll take my headphones out.
No problem. So
yeah.
So what was the unrest? So apparently there was an issue with the cook. There was a woman who was cook the food. She cooked the meals for the students, and she was a widow. She apparently wasn't, her standards of hygiene were not up to par. I imagine the standards weren't as high as they were today to begin with back then. And her standards were not up to par. And these were boys were complaining, so they probably the complaint. He said the complaints were legitimate. There was these weren't finicky. These were a bunch of young guys. They were probably able to handle a lot, but apparently it was offensive. And he said the complaints were not without legitimacy to them. And he said, interestingly, the reaction his father had was that despite whatever validity existed in these complaints, he said, but the cook is a widow, and you can't fire her, so we'll have to just let matters stand. I guess there was no way. She wasn't going to change her ways. And the only choice was to let her go. But he wouldn't do it. So my Rebbe said, I, as a young man who was also a student at the time, I said to my father, you may lose your student body, this whole venture that he basically gave, at the end of the day, essentially he gave his life for this venture. He died at 52. He said, you're going to lose your student body, in which I guess the unspoken argument is the cook won't have a job anyways if the yeshiva closes down. So it's not like you're even helping her if that happens. He said, my father told me that his response was, well, if that's the kind of people they are, I wouldn't give my blood for students like that. It's just basically he said tough. This is my policy, and I don't really care what happens. Of course, the students didn't leave. The yeshiva didn't close down. It's thriving today. But what's the point? The point is that if he was the kind of person that was kind of shrug, take each day as it comes, live, people say live each day, start fresh, live each day as if it's your last, as if it's your first. So fine, so have a yeshiva, to have one today, I don't have one tomorrow. It was obviously not the case because he invested so much physically, emotionally. Most people would have thought the venture was insane to begin with. Only a real person, they say startups in general, even businesses, start with 3 F's. The people who invest in a startup are friends, family, and fools. That's true even in a business. And yeshiva is not a business. It wasn't a profit-making venture. It was in the middle of the Great Depression. So the fact that he even embarked on the venture in the first place was, if he wasn't a fool, he must have been a real person of tremendous faith and passion and commitment. When you have all that faith and passion and commitment, so you're just going to walk away from it because some lady needs a job, and again, not like she's going to have a job if she closed down. But at least you're not that way. You can't fire her. If leave it up to Hashem, we'll keep her on, and if the yeshiva closes, I'll find another job. I mean, can you be that casual about it? And so the answer is that can only happen. That can't happen if you have a mission to start a yeshiva. It will never work because look at history. some of the greatest criminals in history were people who had great ideals and missions in life that meant for the benefit of humanity. Great revolutionaries who said that we're going to create a better world. And what happens? The more passionate they are about their mission, the more committed. So the more absurd it seems to, well, how can I allow one man to stand in the way of my mission? So if this person is against the revolution, they have to be eliminated. And then if there's another person in the way of the revolution, they have to be eliminated too. Before you know it, millions of people are being eliminated. They're all standing in the way of progress. And that's what happens. It's human nature. So how does a person devote themselves so passionately to a mission and then say, well, we can't fire the cook? So the answer is because it's a different mission. The mission is that and that's why it's so important to always ask the question, because it's very easy. There is one, we as human beings aren't always so consistent, and we can be mindful of ideas, and then we fall into a routine, and we start, we rely on our habits, then we stop asking the questions, and we start continuing to do what we've always done without thinking about it necessarily. But there's someone who never stops asking the questions and never stops thinking out of the box and rethinking. That's the Yetzer Hara. He's always looking to get us. So a person may start with passion, and the Yetzer Hara says, great, I love passion, because whatever you're passionate in, I'll just find something that opposes that. And that's how he challenges us. So if my passion is to study Torah, Yetzer Hara will send us somebody who really needs our help. Too busy studying Torah to help the person. If our passion is helping people, the Yetzer Hara says, great. So I'll make sure you have a lot of people to help while you're supposed to be studying Torah. You'll be so busy helping them, you won't have any time to study Torah. And whatever it is, he'll find a way to get us using our own nature. Like the judo master, he used to. I'm not an expert in martial arts, but the guy's running towards you, so you learn how to. You don't fight the person; you learn how to sidestep so that their own momentum carries them, and they go smack into the wall because you simply figure out how fast they're going, and if they expect you to be here, you sidestep, and you don't have to do much. So what's the solution? We have to always ask ourselves the question: what is my mission really? What am I trying to do? What should I be trying to do? And we can't allow a single second to go by where we rely on the answer that was the correct answer the second before, because it could change. So we have to always ask the question again and again. The answer is really always the same. Right? The answer is, I'm in this world to fulfill a mission that was given to me by Hashem to pass through this world. Because that answer is so general and the specifics keep on changing, the circumstances keep on changing. If we don't keep on asking the question, then we'll never know the right answer. And that's the first and most basic foundation. And the thing with foundations, certainly with spiritual foundations, they're all like physical foundations. You can dig one and then forget about it. You don't have to even think about it. Ever think about the fact that it's there. The better the foundation is, the more you can ignore it and not even be aware of it. When my house has a foundation, I've never seen it. I don't know anything about it. I'm not quite sure what it is. I don't have to think about it because it was more than learned. But house had a poor foundation, and I'd be noticing it. I'd be calling contractors to try to figure out how to solve problems in my foundation. But thank God my house is built on a solid foundation. I don't even think about it. With spiritual matters, it doesn't work that way. This is a foundation that needs to be reinforced constantly reinforced. And they say that one way in which a spiritual foundation does parallel a physical foundation is that skyscrapers have foundations. One-story ranch houses have foundations. Obviously, a skyscraper needs a bigger foundation than a one-story ranch house. But a skyscraper's foundation doesn't need to be as tall as a skyscraper. Right? A skyscraper is much taller than a one-story house. The foundation is certainly bigger for a skyscraper, but it's not as big as a skyscraper. If my skyscraper is a mile high, I don't need to dig my foundation a mile deep. What I have to know is, and there are mathematical calculations for it, I need to know that the deeper and the stronger my foundation, the higher my building will be. But it might be that an inch deeper in the foundation will give me another 10 feet of height. I'm just making up the numbers. A small improvement, a small strengthening or deepening or broadening of the foundation can have a very substantial and comparatively speaking, enormous differences in the height of the structure. And that's true about spirituality as well. If this is the foundation, if this awareness, this questioning, this seeking our purpose is the key to our spiritual edifice, it doesn't mean that we need to, completely rebuild. We can doubling our spiritual output doesn't mean we have to double our foundation. It might just be that a slight upgrade to our foundation can help us shoot a skyscraper substantially higher into the air. So when we come to Pesach, getting back to that, so the building blocks, the foundation, what we do is in the Torah. It is the Torah. It's the halachos. Right? The Rav Soloveitchik says the point of the matzah isn't that Hashem found it as an effective way to remember it took us out of Egypt. Hashem took us out of Egypt so that we can eat matzah. Matzah is a mitzvah. That means eating a matzah is part of our mission. But remember, the purpose of our existence in this world is, in every moment, to choose the spiritual over the physical, to choose connection with Hashem over involvement with the world. The 613 mitzvos are the key destination points, or the key markers on the roadmap of how we choose to connect with Hashem and how we're obligated. These are like your mission is to find the following 10 clues and get the treasure at the end. So these are the 613 clues that lead us to the treasure. So it would be incorrect to say the matzah is there to help us remember the Exodus. It would be more correct to say the Exodus was created and orchestrated so that it would lead us to eating matzah. Because if matzah is a mitzvah is never a means. A mitzvah is the end. Everything else is a means. So like everything else, our natural perspective as human beings in this world is completely backwards because we're in this world. They say some people eat to live, and some people live to eat. As the physical part of us, the body, thinks that eating is the highest pleasure, and all the effort that I put in, and from a physical perspective, it's true. I work all day so I can bring home my paycheck, so I can buy a steak and eat the steak, and that's my goal. And the spiritual perspective is exactly the opposite. I eat the steak so that I can have energy, so that I can do my work. My work has to be defined. My work isn't the work I do for my boss, but the work I do for Hashem. So it's a completely opposite perspective. The same is true with the mitzvahs. The mitzvahs are not, now that I ate the matzah, I remember the Exodus, now I can eat the meal. No, it's the opposite. I'm arranging this whole meal because it provides a framework for me to eat the matzah. And it's true about the Morah, the Pesach, and even the search for chametz. These are not preparations for Pesach in the sense that the things that I need to do in order to have a nice holiday. They are the holiday. Because the goal isn't to complete as many tasks as I can as easily and efficiently as possible, that I have no tasks left. The goal is to do those tasks itself. That is the freedom. The Shlomo Volbe in the Sefer Alei Shur, he presents an idea that he writes about in many contexts. It's an idea that's true in self-development and teaching, in raising children, and forming mitzvahs. He says, building and growing, or planting and building, are two different processes that are parallel, complementary processes. The building is something you do brick by brick. It's a mechanical process. You lay a foundation, you put bricks on top of bricks. You have a one-story building or a two-story building. Or to quote another author who said, writing about the idea, you can build an apartment, you can extend an apartment. The apartment will never grow an extension on its own. It's only as many bricks as you put into it, and it's precise and mathematical and mechanical. Planting is something else. You put a seed in the ground, you water it, you tend it, you weed it. You sit back and you let nature take its course, and something grows. And a lot more than you put into it, and it's not something you can completely control. So, in a similar way, we know that the Torah contains halacha, contains laws and mitzvahs. We know the Torah also contains ideas, moral ideas, feelings, thoughts, philosophy, inspiration. Because our lives, what would our lives be? What would the life of a Jew be without the halacha, without the law? The law outlines, creates the structure, the framework of life as a Jew in every generation, in any country, in any society, any community. Whether it's publicly, the structure of the community, the type of institutions, the way a community is set up, what's important, what society values, right? Our goals, our values, our standards as a small community, as a larger community, our Jewish values, and in the life of each individual, whether a great leader or a simple private citizen of the Jewish people, the consistency, the holiness, the eternity of the Jewish people are all bound up with the halacha, the rhythm of Jewish life, the holidays, Shabbos, night and day, Shema in the morning, Shema in the evening, praying, all the things that we do that guide what we eat, what we don't eat, what we say, what we don't say. But at the same time that we observe all these laws that guide, that delineate, that people say, oh, Judaism has so many rules, that being Orthodox is so many restrictions. It's true. But at the same time, within the soul, things start to grow and things start to blossom. Feelings, holy feelings, insights, inspiration, and things that are reflected in the Midrashim and in the what we call the Agada. It's interesting that the word Haggadah, what we read on at the Seder, is the word Agada, which means the Midrashim, the stories, the narratives that are told to us, things that aren't really law, but give us an idea of the inner feelings, the attitudes that a Jew has. And it isn't necessarily something that as human beings we have the capability to fully control or to fully understand. And this is, perhaps with so many different interpretations of the four sons that we can add in, and maybe this is something that has been said before, but the wise son wants to know all the details. Matzah, the chametz, the avikomen. The wicked son says, what's all this work that you're doing? What's it for you? And perhaps the question of the wicked son is he just doesn't see the big picture. He doesn't see this leading to anything. So crawling under the bed to look for Cheerios and paying $42.50 per pound for the tasteless crackers. And, you're sitting at a meal and you have to say this and say that and pick it up and put it down and put it away and take it out and fill it and make a sandwich and this kind of sandwich. Come on. He says, I don't see the meaning. I don't see the spirituality. I don't see the beauty of it. And what's the answer? So I think the answer is that as Jews we have faith. We know and we do believe. The Torah says that the matzah helps you remember, it helps you understand, and helps you become elevated through the story of Exodus, which is really our story. Because in every generation, a person has to view themselves. And we say, I don't feel it, I can't feel it, I consider visualize, I'm thinking about it, I'm using imagery. It only seems to take us so far. It's difficult for us. We also do the matzah because that's the law. So we almost feel like we have two different parts that's compartmentalized. We got to do, if we're conscientious, we got to do the matzah. We got to measure the size. We use the measurement chart, and we have a clock or a timer to make sure we get it within the right amount of time, and we have to make sure that we get the right matzah with the right certification. We do all that. You got to check all those boxes, and then at some point, if I'm not too exhausted, maybe this week this year because Erev Pesach was Shabbos, I'm a little bit more rested. I can try to spend a few minutes in the Seder visualizing, and each process has its frustrations. There's a technical part of fulfilling the halacha. I have to get so many different things and details, and I got everything right, but I forgot that I was supposed to do this before then. I did it out of order, and what do I do now? And did I make the bracha again, or did I make it only once? And I forgot to say this. Should I go back? Should I say it again? And then there's the other process when I actually sit down and if I finally have a little bit of headspace left after all this avoda, after all this work, I say, okay, now I say, imagine myself coming out of the Exodus. Now what? My mind is already turned into jello, and I'm exhausted, and I just can't do that. I don't have that. I'm not so imaginative. I don't have so much faith. I can't really see it. It's so far away, so distant. The stories are so outside of my experience. But we don't. Here's where faith comes in. I think that when we say to ourselves, "Look," and this is what the Shem says as well. When you walk into a pharmacy and you come in with a prescription and they say, "Here's what you need," you don't say, "Those pills look too pink. They look too long. They look too." I like the other one. The other bottle looks better, or better yet, I'll mix my own. I think that ingredient looks healthy and that one looks tasty. And somebody who does that is not going to survive very long. Whatever condition they have, likely to get a lot worse very quickly. Right? When you go to a pharmacy, you trust the pharmacist. It's God is the best pharmacist. God gives us a prescription. Let's trust the fact that if we eat the masa and eat the maror, that there's no better way, because that's why God's giving it to us. There's no better way to get the most out of the Seder. Let's let the seed, let's plant the seeds and let them grow on their own. I don't mean that we shouldn't work to visualize, that we shouldn't try to inspire ourselves, because that's important. It has to be. It does take conscious effort, and the idea of Musar is that we do work, we do visualize. But let's remember that this is not our own script that we've concocted. We can ask ourselves, well, maybe there's a better way to remember the Exodus. Maybe we should take a trip to Egypt. We don't need to do that. If we needed to, that would have been part of the law. God told us exactly, you need to eat a matzah. Matzah, that's what you need. Oh, come on. There's that old folk tale about the lady in the shtetl who made the best latkes. And everyone else was jealous of her. So one lady tells her husband, go sneak up to that woman's window and watch as she makes her latkes. And come back and report to me. I want to make latkes that are just as good as hers. And the husband doesn't want to, but she beats him over the head with a rolling pin, and he goes and he sneaks and hides in the bushes and watches. He takes notes and comes home, and he shows his wife the recipe. So first she takes a pound of this kind of potato. Okay, one kind of potato is very much like another. I have potatoes that are just as good. I'll take my own kind of potatoes. Then she uses exactly this amount of this kind of oil. Well, my oil is just as good, and I don't need that much. That's too much oil. I'm going to use less oil. Then she beats the eggs with the eggs. Oh, come on, who needs to beat eggs with an egg? And then finally she makes the latkes, and they taste, just like the latkes. She always makes it. She says, "Oh, it must be just a bunch of hype. I bet that other woman's latkes aren't any better than mine." Because we have to have faith that Hashem's system is the best system. It's the only system. That Hashem's system works, and this is the privilege that we have, that we're doing the mitzvahs creates within us the best feelings, the truest feelings, and we don't need to figure out. We don't need to question whether we're doing the right thing. We know we're doing the right thing. The only question we have to ask is, what am I supposed to be doing? And if we can answer that question properly and say, this is what I'm supposed to be doing, so then everything else is not our problem. And this is what we celebrate when we say we were freed from Egypt. And the Mesilas Yesharim says, this was exactly none other than Pharaoh. His strategy was the same as the strategy of the Sahara, to keep us so busy working his work, fulfilling his agenda, that we would have no time to think about, what is my work supposed to be? What is my agenda? He knew that if the children of Israel stopped to think a little bit about anything, to think at all, they would immediately begin coming up with ideas, searching for freedom. He said that's when Moshe Rabbeinu came to him and said, "Let my people go." He said, "There's only one solution. This has to be nipped in the bud, and my only solution is to intensify the workload so they stop thinking." And the Sahara does the same thing. His only and best strategy is to keep us so busy that we stop thinking. And once we start thinking, he's doomed. So Pesach is the time to think. But what do we think about? We think about, what is my job? If my job is to search for crumbs, or my job is to stay up till 1 in the morning or 2 in the morning or whatever in the morning reading this text. I read this text, and The fact that I might have a better text or a different text, or I don't know whether the text resonates with me, it doesn't matter, because Hashem knows, and our neshama knows, our soul knows, and that's why Pesach is so powerful. That's the real reason that Pesach has stayed with the Jewish people, because it's the right prescription, because Hashem knows that it's the right prescription. I remember I was with this speculator. I was listening on the radio to somebody, I forget who it was. This was a violinist. I think it was a woman. And she studies under another famous violinist, I think it was a man, and I think he was Hungarian. That's about all I remember. But she basically said that this guy was such a micromanager. He was very on top of his disciples, making sure they did it exactly so. The interviewer said, with all of that kind of precise mentorship, is there any room for creativity in music? She said, let me tell you. This teacher was he was so on top of everything. He would listen to every note and everything that happened in between every note. And when he was sure that you had it, he would say, okay, now play. She said, ultimately, the greatest discipline leads to the greatest creativity. And such a powerful idea that resonates with Yiddishkeit. And that we don't have to be creative by rewriting. Or even if we're not rewriting, we're not going to do that. But we don't have to come up with our own ideas. People like it's not necessarily bad. We have every family has its own gimmicks for the Seder, its own cute things to keep people engaged, and people come up with the props for the machos. That's fine, but that's not what ultimately the main point. But do exactly what Hashem tells us. All the halacha precisely. Get it exactly right, and when you've mastered it, just go out and play. Let the music take over. And you'll hear the beauty of it. That's Hashem's promise to us. So, on that note, I want to wish everybody a very happy rest of Pesach. And thank you for tuning in today. God willing, next week, by this time, we should be back to normal, whatever, normal, quote unquote. And hopefully we'll speak again. Until then, but wonderful Yom Tov. Good night. Good Yom Tov.
Thank you so much, Rabbi. You as well.
Thank you, Rabbi.
You as well. Awesome.